Alright folks, Extrema Ratio sent me a new knife for review, and I'm gonna give you an in-depth look at it and tell you what I think. So, this is the A.M.F, which stands for Advanced Multifunction. There's a bit of marketing speech for you right there, but it certainly sounds better than knife that you can use for a bunch of different stuff, right? So, here it is. It's inspired by 80s survival knives, and if you look at it, the general outline and the grind does look fairly similar to a classic K-bar, for example, which is one of the most iconic survival knives, obviously. Just like other knives from Extrema Ratio, the blade is made of N690 cobalt stainless steel, which is a very hard steel. It's got high durability, wear resistance, and excellent edge retention. Also very good corrosion resistance, which of course is important for a survival knife that's going to be exposed to the elements. The guard and fittings are made of stainless steel, and the handle material, again like other Extrema Ratio knives, is Forprene. So very good anti-slip surface, doesn't even need any texturing to give you a very good grip. If the grip shape looks uncomfortable to you, I used to be in that camp too. On pictures it just looks kind of strange, when you just look at it like this, but in hand it's perfectly comfortable, and it's nice to have this kind of raised area here. Just gives you something to hold on to with either the index finger or the middle finger, depending on exactly where you hold it and your hand size and all of that. So that works quite well, and this is a fairly thick grip, more so than on some other knives that I've reviewed. So if you have fairly large hands, this should fill your palm quite well. Although there's one concern here. If you have, like a size 10 or something, fairly large hands, you might have some trouble fitting in the space between the upper and lower guard. But definitely for medium-sized hands, no problem at all. On the website it says it's a flat grind. Call me crazy, but to me that looks like a saber grind, since it stops right here. It does not go all the way to the spine of the blade, which makes sense. Saber grind for a survival knife, if you want to emphasize strength and durability, definitely makes certain sense. There is also a Swedge on the back here where the spine thins out. Now this is good for penetration because it reduces the thickness here a little bit, and since it is multifunction for combat purposes, that would certainly be useful. But I have mixed feelings about that, because with how thin this gets here, that can definitely interfere with batoning. This will chew up whatever you use as a baton rather quickly. So personally, I think I would have preferred to have maybe even a full flat grind, but either way have the spine be the same thickness throughout, because I don't really see too much use for this. I mean, you could potentially pry with it in some situations. Some people sometimes use a Swedge to even pull nails, things like that, but overall for batoning it would be better if it was the same thickness throughout, in my opinion. There's one issue I almost forgot to mention. I haven't been able to strike sparks from a ferro rod with the spine. Even on the widest part of the spine, the corners are not sharp enough to do that. So you would be forced to use the edge to strike sparks with. For a survival knife, that's quite an oversight. But of course, whenever you're talking multifunction, you're talking compromise to some extent, because there is no such thing as a knife that's perfect at everything. Like, you cannot excel at very different functions without something being compromised along the way. Like, for example, the saber grind is, as I said, a lot more durable, much more resistant to damage than a flat grind, although a flat grind can also be very strong and durable, but it doesn't cut quite as well, and it can bind a little bit more in the wood as you're chopping or batoning. And although it has enough heft and blade length to allow for fairly effective chopping, of course, if you wanted a dedicated chopping knife, you would be better off with something like the KH, for example. Now, this is basically the oldest, gnarliest, toughest dead tree stump that I can find around here. So this is really just to see how tough the knife is. This is obviously pointless. Initially I was worried about the lower guard here maybe banging up the little finger or transmitting shock, but it really doesn't. I'm gonna deliberately hold it low. Even then, it doesn't bother me the way it's curved and rounded. This, by the way, is from something else, just in case you're wondering. Yeah. Chops well. And the edge is perfectly fine, still nice and sharp. Obviously not a dedicated chopping knife, but in a pinch, if you had to, you could do something with it. Batoning is of course better, but chopping to an extent. For the testing, I was mainly interested in the durability and chopping power, because things like debarking and various whittling, making feather sticks, cutting food, etc. As long as you maintain a good edge and as long as the blade geometry didn't go horribly wrong, it's going to do that pretty well overall. Things like cutting food and preparing fish, of course, definitely benefit from a flat grind or even a hollow grind. So it's not going to be ideal with this knife, but again, we're talking compromise anyway. One thing I noticed is that the finish, in my opinion, could be more durable. You can definitely see right here, there is quite a scratch there. Now that happened when I did some throwing tests with it, which is something I'd like to do to really test the knife's fit and strength, because that can really put a lot of stress on the blade, on the grip construction in particular, but also whenever it bounces off the target and hits some rocks, which it did in this case. That's something that a survival knife should be able to deal with, because it is likely to be dropped at times, or accidentally hit rocks or other hard materials. So the edge overall took that perfectly well. I can't see any damage on the edge. There's a little bit, I don't know if you can even see that, a tiny bit of reflection on the edge right here. So that's pretty minor wear. There's no chipping or rolling. Overall, the edge is in very good condition. Initially out of the box, the edge came shaving sharp, as you can see here, popping the hair. After all that, chopping and throwing, etc. Let's see where it's at now. Yeah, definitely some dull spots, but overall it still cuts. Another thing I like is that you can disassemble it for more thorough cleaning or maintenance. All you need is Allen key, guard comes off, and yeah, look at the tang. That is a serious beefy tang right there. So this is really the main advantage of this knife, in my opinion. Durability, like, this is an absolute monster. It's very, very massive, solid blade, high quality steel. This is the kind of thing that you can just abuse to your heart's content, essentially. It's also nice to see that they rounded the shoulder here, so you're not going to get any stress fractures there. So yeah, this, I mean, you can see, you see it for yourself. I don't have to say much. This is definitely a tank of a knife. It is nice to be able to tighten it up if with chopping, the grip compresses and it loosens up. I haven't noticed any of that. Like, it was still perfectly tight after the testing, and I definitely appreciate the fit. Like, this is very precisely shaped. and there are no gaps, so that's nice. And yeah, everything just fits really well. Also, it's good to have this as a glass breaker in case you need that. And, you know, in terms of combat application, you also have this as a striking point. You have the guard. Additional guard could also be potentially used for striking. So yeah, it's definitely got a lot going for it. As a fighting knife, again, it's a good all-rounder. It doesn't thrust as well as a dagger, but it definitely cuts better. And again, like I said, the Swedge here helps penetration, but the tip is still substantial enough. I definitely appreciate that they didn't go excessively thin on that. I did some prying tests with it pretty aggressively and no problem, did not deform at all, did not break. So yeah, you can do a lot with that tip. It goes quite far, and this synthetic ballistic gel is not easy to penetrate, so definitely works quite well. This is of course also strength dependent. The stronger you are, the better you're going to perform with it. Okay, I think this looks more dramatic than it is because there was already a bit of damage here. Although still pretty good. Went pretty far into the gel. You can use it in a variety of grips. You can thrust from different angles. At first, when I looked at it, when I first got it, in fact, I was assuming that this was a dedicated combat knife. That would not be unreasonable at all with this kind of design. But yeah, as a survival knife, it can fulfill that purpose if need be. Nasty. And you could also potentially mount it as a spear by tying it to a stick. On the upper guard, there's a hole on each side. On the lower guard, there are 2 holes. So you have a variety of attachment methods there. And yeah, so as you can tell, you can do a lot of different things with this knife. You know, surprise, surprise, from a knife being called advanced multifunction. Who would have known, right? I think personally, I would have preferred a full flat grind over the saber grind. I don't think it needs that really, considering how thick the stock is. That's durability is not a problem to begin with, so I don't think that's necessary whatsoever. It would have been probably better to emphasize cutting ability. Oh, it cuts decently well, but it could do better. More durable finish, like I said, would be nice, even though you can get the desert version with a plain steel blade, so then you don't have to worry about the finish at all. So yeah, that's pretty much it. And again, the Swedge, I do like that for thrusting, but for batoning, not quite so good. As far as the sheath is concerned, definitely like it. It's got molly attachment options here. Fit. Without using the strap, it's quite loose, but with the strap, it's good. The only thing that I don't like quite as much is a little bit fiddly. Like the strap, in my opinion, should be just a little bit longer because you do have to work a bit for it to actually engage that snap closure. There. Now, once you've got it, it's extremely solid. But yeah, the sheath could certainly be tighter, and it would be nice if this was just slightly longer. The only other complaint I have is really what I mentioned in every other Extrema ratio knife review as well. They are generally high priced, so that is a bit of a deterrent, and you can get comparable knives for less money for sure. I do think that you get quite a lot of quality for the price, but I would definitely like if they were more affordable. Like there's certainly quite a bit of competition in terms of lower price. Oh, one thing that I would also point out is more of a nitpick really, but on this one here, I'm not really a fan of the giant writing here, like Extrema ratio. That's a really large print there, and on the other side as well, 58 HRST. Yeah, but I appreciate that it says on there what the hardness is, but do we need it this freaking huge? I don't think so. That's like aesthetically, that's a bit of a bummer. So that I would prefer if this was a lot smaller. Anyway, that should be enough blah blah for right now. If you're interested in this knife, the link will be in the video description down below. And yeah, hope you found the review helpful. Thanks for watching and have a good one, folks. Oh, this is not the most comfortable position for my aging bones.